Hello, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us in this live conversation about radio. Now, once upon a time, Buggles said video killed the radio star, but it's all turning the other way round. These days, radio, online, TV, it all seems to be the same thing. It all gets middled up together. So, I've got a group of experts together and we're going to talk about it. So, let's introduce ourselves. Down the bottom, hello from Mola Mola.
Hi, I'm Simon Rush. I'm the creative director of Mola Mola Creative. And we write radio ads and make them. But saying radio ads, it's not just radio ads these days, anything audio. So podcast ads, smart speaker ads, all that kind of stuff.
Okay, and sat next to you, we have...
Hello, my name's Jack Orry. I'm a professional voiceover artist. As it says on the tin, I voice ads. But in terms of radio ads, as Simon just alluded to, I wouldn't really call them radio ads anymore. I call them audio ads because of the mediums that they go out on.
And sat next to me, but not sat next to me because this is all virtual, of course, is John Carl.
Hi, nice to meet everyone. My name is John Carl. I'm the owner at Ground Marketing. Done all sorts of different marketing campaigns before, including the use of radio ads and different types of ad formats. And can't wait to chat about different bits of the day and how radio has changed.
Now, we do have a live audience. If you're watching and you want to participate, you want to ask any questions, do drop them into the chat and we will bring them up on screen so that everybody can see. We've already got Leah coming in this morning. Morning, gents. Does anybody know Leah?
I do not know Leah.
No. Well, morning, Leah. Thanks for joining us. Radio. A lot of people might think radio's been and gone. It's a bit of a dinosaur, but that's really very not the case, is it, Simon? Radio's still very alive and kicking at the moment.
It is very much. It's reinventing itself, and for some people, it's probably going a little bit quicker than they would like. But it's really in the way that it's delivered the main changes. So you can get it over your smart speaker, over your mobile phone, but still people are listening to traditional FM broadcasting as well as digital radio and DAB plus. So radio audiences, commercial radio audiences are certainly maintaining and growing slightly. There was a concern that young people would stop listening to radio, and they're not really.
Well, the thing about radio has always been is it's a thing that you can listen to whilst you're doing something else. Whereas everything else requires you to kind of stop for a minute and take the time to do it. And we live in a world where we're getting busier and busier. So although we want to consume things like social media, we might want to, binge watch Netflix or any other kind of streaming service. Radio we can still listen to whilst we're driving from here to there. We can listen whilst we're commuting. We can listen while it can be actually on in the background, but still actually have an effect. And is part of the skill of writing for radio is to capture that attention when maybe it's a passive listener in the first place.
I'm not sure that this idea of the passive listener, I think everybody's listening, but what they're listening out for, what their brain is tuning out for is what's relevant to them. So it's like being in a dinner party. And if you're at a dinner party, there's lots of people around and you hear someone on the other side of the room mention your name and you immediately tune into that. You hear it because it's relevant to you. And it's the same with radio advertising is we're always trying to tune into the person that we're trying to reach. Now, I don't mind, Graham, if I'm selling, nappies. Well, you're not in that market anymore.
No.
So I can write, there's two things I can do. I can write an ad that's relevant to people buying nappies, but be respectful to you and try and make it entertaining and interesting to listen to, although I'm selling to the potential nappy buyer. Or I can use the technology these days and really target the people who've just had babies. And one of the slightly worrying things is these days you can, what is it called? Micro target. So you can really hone in on certain groups of people and deliver messages to them. Now, you can't do that so much with FM, but I target you with an ad for nappies, and you have a friend who's got a specific problem with nappies, whatever that might be, you're still a secondary market, if you like, which is the advantage of FM radio. You're hitting primary and secondary markets.
I think there's two things that have always been, even though radio has evolved, there's always been key to making a successful radio campaign. And that's one, great creative that addresses a problem, like Simon was saying. So when there's a problem with nappies, it might be that you have a nappy brand, and maybe, and I know this because I'm going through it at the minute, that maybe there's some leakage or whatever, and you're looking for maybe a better quality nappy or whatever, or maybe it's too expensive, and there's an Simon will write something that answers that problem. And two, also, a very good schedule. Now, no one ever goes, oh, do you remember how good that radio schedule was? They always go, oh, do you remember how good that ad was? But without one or the other, if you bring them both together, you're likely, and you answer a genuine problem that people have, you're likely, as for years and still the case, you're likely to have a successful campaign for an advertiser.
Yeah. The right people have got to hear your message.
Yeah.
Well, I think Leah's just talked about how, local car ad in New York, an obnoxious voice. I think sometimes you can get your attention grabbed by things like that. And I think it's all about in that creative, how you capture it. Now, I think your analogy for like a dinner party, Simon, is like really spot on. But you can have ads which partner with a larger marketing mix to create a great story. I mean, for me, one that stands out that will stay to my grave is the Go Compare adverts. That song and that jingle was so annoying, going back to Leah's point of obnoxious, that is stuck in my head, and I cannot forget the Go Compare man. But I think you're completely right in the sense that anything in the terms of radio, it isn't necessarily passive. It's something that is on and people can take in it. Like for me, when we were doing, again, just a short story about when I worked with Simon, I was working at a company called Shift at the time, and we were launching a huge brand awareness campaign in London. Now, part of that was to obviously use socials, digital forms of marketing, but it was my interest to actually bring a lot of traditional forms in as well, because I think they were some of the most powerful, one of them being radio. Now, I think radio on its own at that campaign wouldn't be as effective as it had other channels to go alongside it. But the whole point of that was to focus on a person's user journey. So all I wanted to do was target someone for the whole day to make sure that they saw my message. So they were coming into London, they'd see the tube, they'd then go get the overground train potentially and see ads there. Then they'd go and maybe perhaps go past a bus or a billboard and see it there. And then once they were in the office, we were also there in the background of people's day to kind of be integrated with that. And it was such a fun experience doing all the creative behind that. But Simon worked very hard on those scripts to make it all fit in with our overarching creative message, which was a whole alliteration of, how people moved things from A to B. And it worked so well. I got a lot of traction from that. People actually saying, oh yeah, I heard you on the radio the other day. And that was one of the most important ways that people recognized us. It was radio in our vans that we did. Seeing and hearing, I think, was very important. People didn't say, oh, I saw you on the tube. They were more likely to say, I heard you on the radio, which was very interesting from the results of all of that.
Yeah. And it's attribution of radio is a very difficult thing, because the way that radio works is in the visual memory. So I did work a long time ago for a client who asked their customers, where did they hear about them? And a lot of people, because they knew the music on their ad, the jingle, if you like to use it, the old fashioned phrase for it, the jingle, they knew it. Where did you hear it? TV. But they weren't doing any TV advertising.
Right.
But it had worked in the visual part of their memory.
That leads nicely onto the thing we talk about in radio, of the theatre of the mind, which is, the good thing about an audio ad is for production, you could have absolutely brilliant production values with brilliant sound engineers, great writers like Simon and stuff, and the audio sounds fantastic. Now, whatever that audio, if you're depicting some sort of scene via that audio, what I picture in the head is different to what Simon pictures in the head. And so that what you see is like the best version of the ad with it. Yep. And it's the same reason why quite often the novel is better than the film. And it's a real strength for audio that good writers and good sound engineers get and have the skill to utilize.
It's kind of like horror in the sense that, again, I'm a horror nerd. Actually not seeing the monster or the scary thing is way more scary, because in your own head you make the scariest thing up. But yeah, I think that's a great way of like putting it. Like,
and on a very basic level, you take a company like DFS, the people who do suites, and you see their TV ad, and you hope that you're going to have one suite in that ad that's going to connect with someone. But I watch them quite often and think, I wouldn't have that in my house. But actually, when you go down to DFS, hundreds of suites, and there's some in there that are absolutely gorgeous. Now, with a radio ad, you tap into that. It's not about how it looks, because come on down and have a look at what we've got and how comfortable it is.
It's about personality or feel or comfort, and
because I worry a little bit about talking about Go Compare trod a very, very dangerous line. This standing out because we irritate people. We've got to be very careful with that. And I think he became quite a lovable character. But there's people close to me who said I would never buy from them or go to their comparison website because I hate the adverts so much. But I think more people loved it than hated it. And it's a very thin line. I don't want to irritate listeners. I want it to be memorable, but memorable for the right reasons.
I think those people that what do they call it, the brand shopping list. Go Compare is at the top of the brand shopping list for them now, because they're really aware of that. Well, and I think these people, if it means, if Go Compare then go, okay, we'll give you £250 free access if you go through us, they'll definitely use them if they hear that on the radio. It won't stop them using it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the fine line in marketing. I've said to clients before, you can get away with being annoying. Like, it does work, because you become suddenly in people's minds, and what you want to be is unforgettable. Now, I think you're right, Simon. It is a fine line. You don't want to become painful and make everyone go, "Oh, I hate that brand." But it's quite a good way of getting your foot in the door. And yeah, as you said, if you just have a really good call to action or USP, such as £250 off your excess, even if you don't particularly like that sort of said thing, you still might go, "Oh yeah, I'll go get it then." Like, it does work like that. I don't think people are as annoyed by stuff like that than we let on to be, I think.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why I'm very cautious with client voiced ads. It's that you think you sound great on the radio, you don't.
You don't.
Oh God, I would not like to hear my voice already. I hate hearing it back anyway.
and people say what, and then the client says, yeah, but people remember it. No, what you mean is you go into your local pub, and people say, "Oh, I heard your radio ad," but they didn't like it.
How does that tally with? How does that tally with the kind of voice that's going around things like social media, for example, about being authentic, which we could debate till the cows come home. But how? I mean, I feel that you can make something authentic, but still have it the best it can be. Yeah.
I've got a point on this, because as a voiceover, you notice trends in how you're directed. And I would say the biggest keyword I get at the top of my scripts at the minute is sound authentic. Right. But that could mean depends on the creative director what they mean from that. If you're shouting a load of price points on sofas or whatever, that's not really authentic. But if you're talking about a subject that's quite sensitive, for example, I don't know, domestic violence or something, mental health, something like that, or just health, then there is an authenticity that you can try and tap into. And this is why audio is brilliant, because it is people listen to a breakfast show on whichever radio station they choose, and they almost have a relationship like a friend relationship with the host of that show. So radio is a really personal medium, and if you are being authentic, and the ad is about mental health or something, you are probably talking to, there's a good chance that there will be thousands of listeners that will be affected by that subject, and the authenticity coupled with the relationship they have with radio is a powerful one we have to respect, but it, it can really get the message out there that the advertiser is trying to get out.
There's a word in there. The word that is the Radio Centre have done some work on this. Trust. People trust people who advertise on radio, and we've got so many things that have helped that. The Radio Centre have copy clearance. Any ad that I write now, I put that's going on broadcast radio goes through the Radio Centre. They check it for authenticity. They make sure that I'm being legal, decent, honest, and truthful. And people say, "Oh, people lie in advertising all the time." It's very difficult to do that on the radio because we've got a system of checks and balances. Social media, I get really worried about clicking on a link. Where's it going to take me? Who's really behind this? Even if it says Honda on it and I click on it, where am I actually going? And if I know this client from radio, I have a little bit more trust in it, and a little bit more trust in their social, or I will bypass the social to go to their website. And trust is really important.
I think.
Sorry, John. I was just going to say, you only have to look at any social media platform, and you see there's a plethora of ghostwriters out there, all applying their trade,
right?
Saying, "Yeah, we can write authentically for you." We can, chat GTP. Yeah, well, let's talk about that. The fact that
let's not talk about chat GTP.
Technology is coming in and potentially can create a voice, but that's why I choose to do this on social media, because I feel that when you get voices together, when people are in a position where they need to actually talk about a subject from their head, amongst other stakeholders within their profession, there's nowhere to hide. And that for me was all, that was kind of in a way bringing it back to radio, and I think that's one of the reasons why podcasts are becoming quite popular again as well, is because there's less opportunity for that to be inauthentic.
It's people's. I had a great conversation yesterday with a client about people's perceptions of different marketing channels. And, when I was studying marketing, it was like traditional versus digital. Digital seemed like the new thing and how it's going to be. But you look at everyone now and concerned with their data and where things are going. And I had a great conversation with someone yesterday. And, I said to her, what do you not like about, for instance, socials and ads there? And, she was saying, where's that coming from? Where's my data coming from? How do they know I like this sort of stuff? I'm concerned by that. I will engage with that. And then I said, well, what about, and then she went on to saying, I don't really like ads at all. And I said, what about a radio ad, or what about a billboard? He said, oh, they're fine though. And I'm like, well, that's still targeted in a way, but they are more traditional, more honest forms of marketing. And it's kind of the big leagues as well, as I'd say. Again, with social media's advertising models, anyone can jump on and do something. Now, is that a bad thing, or is that an opportunity for small businesses? Yes or no, we could debate that again all day. But radio in itself, it does create those trusted relationships. Again, looking at radio presenters, they are also have their own social following, and people follow them and engage with them. And having a radio ad appear on there, people don't necessarily think, oh, it's just on there. It's got to be curated. And people must have been recognized that actually this is part of what they're showing as their show anyway. So it does create that trust relationship. And actually, it's one of the biggest important parts of any sort of marketing.
Yeah, I like some of the points Leah's making, actually.
It's interesting. It actually starts earlier for me in terms of I have to believe in the brief before I write the ad.
Oh, thank God you believed in me, Simon.
Well, I did. That's why we have conversations about things, because I want to be convinced that what I'm going to put in an ad is the truth and is compelling.
Mm.
And that's the kind of clients I want to work with.
Mm.
I refuse to work with someone who's trying to pull the wool over people's eyes and say, well, can you put that in the ad? Well, is it true? Not really, but if we say it often enough, people will believe it. Well, no,
Yeah.
that's
We're the
people will
greatest
find
this
you
in the
out.
world. Yeah.
Mm.
Leah's point there that she made on LinkedIn is she's spot on.
I didn't read that. Sorry.
Well, she's basically the trust with radio comes from, you know, historic events. Like I think she's in America, but so is the Depression and World War II and things. A recent example. I mean, the radio industry certainly in the UK is really established, not just commercial, the BBC as well.
Mm.
And for example, I'm from Carlisle in Cumbria. Carlisle got terrible floods a few years ago, and you know, quite disastrous for the city. And people turned on the radio for help, and the BBC and the commercial radio did their job as well. But the BBC, local there, Radio Cumbria, was so important to people those few days. And that's where the key messaging was getting out. You know, it was unprecedented for people, you know, thousands of people to be flooded, no power. It was a real, and what people had at their disposal to consume was the radio, getting out all the key messages that were needed. And I was going to raise another point just before that, which is similar. So the radio industry in the UK is really established. All right, so we've got. It has changed quite a lot. We've got new stations, or we've got old stations being rebranded as I suppose brands now. You know, there's the Capital brands, the Heart brands, the Kiss brands, etc. However, because we've grown up with radio and it's been, you know, going long before I have. Unlike social media, it's very trusted for the reasons we've just discussed. And I think when people there's a perception that if you can advertise on radio, you know, you get that trust. And I think one of the reasons is because people think it's expensive to advertise on radio when it doesn't, depending on your budget, it's not necessarily. You can go on local radio, or you can go on, you know, DAX and things for a relatively modest budget. So it's quite an open medium to get into as well. You know, there's plenty of smaller businesses that completely utilize radio very well because they're advised well from their agencies or their account managers.
Can I just pick up on a quick point that you've made there? Because radio, and we mentioned it at the beginning, radio is now everywhere, and people can set up a radio station from their home. Yeah, we can create a digital radio station, but there is a big difference between those radio stations and those that conform to the proper regulations as well. Not saying that some of those don't, but there are some that don't. And is that a problem in itself these days?
You know, you go back to something like publishing. Publishing became very easy. People could self-publish, but the good books are still the best sellers.
Yeah.
And so there's always room for new creativity to come in. But frankly, the good stuff will rise to the top. So I don't worry about
that. There's, I think you're right, but on the contrary, there's really good. You know, we're sat here at the Pride Media Centre, and Pride Radio is strictly speaking a community station, but they are run by real radio pros, and you know, like an advertiser, they see Simon called them a problem. It's not a problem, like there was a need from the LGBTQ+ community to have, you know, a radio station that targeted them, and these guys, even though they are a community station, they sound top notch.
Yeah.
And they then, you know, so there was a need from people to have this sort of radio station. There was an audience there, and they're continuing to capture them, and people from outside the LGBTQ+ community as well, because, you know, it's good music, it's got personality, and the production values are really high. So it's on to a winner.
That's what I'm talking about. The kind of the good stuff comes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, and it is rising to the top.
It's the accessibility of what people can do, and I mean, like going back to the trust proof, people aren't always there for the music. They might have that theme of music they like, but it's also the people talking and the daily conversations, because they create those relationships with those people,
That's
wanting
it.
to get their news, informed, however
Yeah.
they want. And I think jumping back to, that looking at the history of it, it's that word in marketing speak, we say it's traditional. But I think for me, that means consolidated. And it's almost going back to the fact that when you go on TV or radio, really you can say you've made it. Like, I felt very, very excited when I had, my gran actually call me up and say, "Hey, I just heard a shift out on the radio." And I was like, "Yeah, we did that. It's real." And that was like really exciting for me as an advertiser, because you're like, yeah, people are hearing it. I didn't also, with those ads, I didn't really sit there and expect to target my 70-year-old gran, but here she is listening to it, heard it, and gone, "Oh, I really liked the creative behind it."
She
It was
sounds
really
like your
funny.
biggest fan.
She is my biggest fan. She is my biggest fan. It's really, really sad at the moment. She just got COVID, so it's like, oh god.
Is she your biggest critic as well?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Fantastic.
She said the bus stop ads could do a bit better. I was like, "Oh, thanks, Karen." Thanks for that.
Oh, I love that.
Give her a director's role.
Yeah.
We ought to say a thank you to Pride for giving you the opportunity to talk out of there today. Do you want to just say a quick word about what facilities they've got?
It's just an amazing place. I have an office here. Jack does as well. He's got his voice booth here. It's a radio station, several radio stations. I think there's maybe 5 or 6 radio stations now targeting different groups. They have green screen facilities. They have a drive-in studio. It's just an amazing place. If you're up in the Northeast in Gateshead, come and have a look.
It's an amazing place that's kind of hidden away, and if you know about it, you know about it. But I don't think many people do. And it's funny because you will go and make a cup of tea here, and a celebrity will walk past you. And I don't think the people that live out 50 meters down the road have got any idea that particular person is driving past the house. I just find
and it's dog friendly.
I've always liked that about radio stations. The fact that you kind of walk past celebrities in the tea making area. Yeah.
I just can't help myself from thinking about Toasted London. Can you hear me, Cliff Fandango? I made that joke when I was with Simon when I first went up to the studio, and I got the most concerned look from Simon, just going, "Oh my god, did you really just say that?"
Simon, you were going to say something?
Well, I mean, It is an amazing place here, and the links that we have with other places. Jonathan, when we did the shift ads, we hired a studio in London. We had the whole comfy sofa experience and the voice on the line, and spent some time putting the ads together. We put together several bits of creative. They did it the right way. They had multiple pieces of creative. It ran on lots of radio stations. It was just a pleasure to do the job. And if people took kind of TV budgets, if they took half of their TV budget and invested it in radio, you'd have some great sounding radio commercials.
Even in some cases.
Not even half. Yeah. But people tend to think about the schedule and then how much money do we have left over to make an ad? Can we get it done for that?
Like I said before, no one ever remembers a great schedule.
Well, I think people from a marketing point of view, people see radio as like, it's an add-on, and I think it's a very crucial booster in my perception, rather than it being, if you went for a radio channel on its own, it would stand on its 2 legs. But it works so well if you have a larger marketing mix to support it, because then suddenly you see your results go boom.
Sorry, Jonathan. We talk about attribution. One of the things that happens is they go on the radio. A client goes on the radio and they say, "Well, I don't know if I'm getting any results from my radio commercial, but my web hits have gone through the roof. I think that's my social." Well, what's changed? Oh, the radio ads. Okay. Well, maybe it's your radio ads doing their job.
You took the words right out of my mouth. You will see. You won't see someone being like directly typing in whatever, but you will suddenly see people more searching more for what you do. I think jumping back to TV, people think TV is the big one. And I think actually TV is changing into more of a YouTube digital than radio is. You can have ads on stuff like Spotify, but radio, I definitely see a resurgence of it coming back. Like any office I go to for a client, they're not sat there with headphones on listening to their streams or anything. They're listening to the radio, and it's always there.
And fair play to the the bosses of the radio industry and the people that work, because the radio has evolved in terms of offering more audio products than your traditional FM radio. And smart speakers are brilliant, because I don't own an FM radio, but I listen to my radio stations more, and it's so accessible on my smart speakers or on my mobile or whatever. However, you know, the radio industry is now also in the podcast industry. They're producing, you know, really good podcasts. And what Simon was saying before, you know, the targeted advertising. I've done sessions, you know, for smart ads where I could literally, Simon could be listening and he would hear it, and I'll go, "Hi Simon, it's sunny, it's bank holiday. Why don't you get yourself down to this shop on this street here, which is near you, and you can go and pick up a barbecue and some stuff for $9.99." And and that's brilliant, you know. And that's an interesting tool, because I think first of all, there was the novelty of it, where we could just be like, "Oh, hi John," and that would be cool, because but it wasn't necessarily answering, you know, the brief. However, there are clever ways of utilizing that and getting it really targeted, and I think that's quite clever.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the coolest targeted ads I've seen campaigns recently, and I don't know if anyone else heard it, was in Bristol, was Boots did one where they combined YouTube ads with radio ads, where they were talking about the summer, talking about the actual weather upcoming, and saying, yeah, get yourself down to get SPF 50. It's on offer now, because this weekend in Bristol, it's going to be a scorcher.
Brilliant.
And it worked so well. Like,
That's been around for quite a while, that kind of temperature or weather change. But now there's a company called, and you can find them on the internet, called A Million Ads, and they do variations within the copy. Or I can do it and send the ad to them, and they will make it so that if it's a Tuesday morning, it will say, "Hi, it's Tuesday, and the weather," whatever it is. What you have to be careful, but you have to be careful how it's received by the listener, because I don't want to be hyper targeted. I don't want them to know too much about me.
Yeah.
But I did hear an ad for Lidl, and it gave me the offers and said, "And your nearest Lidl is in Pelor." Now that was subtle targeting to me through my speaker, and that's great. And the technology is amazing, but let's be careful with it and use it smartly, rather than using it because it can do this. Because it can do it, should we do it? Not necessarily.
Well, I think 1,000,000%. It's any sort of marketing channel. Again, that same conversation. And whereas Leah, that's a great question. You know, the one-to-one-ish direct personalization. I think it erodes trust in any form of marketing communication. You know, a few channels subsided, but you know, if you have a Facebook ad and it, you know, because you can do stuff like that and it tells you absolutely everything about you, you do think like you're being listened to, and it really puts you off. And I think with anything like radio, again, if you're so personal to it, I think I'd be a bit creeped out more than anything else. You're like, oh God, how do they know about, you know, the fact that I got 2 dogs, a kid, and everything? Really strange.
I think slightly differently, because for my answer to Leah's question, I think the trust the advertisers earn on radio is a secondary result of the trust that the listener gets with their breakfast show presenters or whatever. So I don't think listeners go, "I trust radio ads." I don't think they say, you know, they consciously realize
sit there
that
and
they
say
trust it. But as long as radio as a whole,
they trust that
brand, engaging.
They trust the bigger brand.
Exactly. And not necessarily the brand, just the personalities within that.
Yeah, listeners, they'll turn on and be like, "I want to listen to Greg, whatever, this morning, and, you know, I want to see what he's talking about."
Yeah.
But it's not explicitly going, "I trust him with my life."
Yeah.
We're getting near to time, but I kind of want to leave us with one other thing, which is, you know, you've mentioned a lot of people might see radio advertising as secondary, and, you know, it's a cheaper option to perhaps go to social media first, and then, you know, look at homemade video, and then, you know, somewhere down the line you look at TV, etc. But I think that actually a lot of companies where they fall down is that actually they haven't got together what they're marketing, and they haven't actually sussed what is their objectives and their purposes. They haven't actually got together, if you like, their kind of massive transformational purpose that they can sell out to the world. And instead, what they've got is a whole load of kind of marketing messages, which actually kind of get lost in the ether. One of the things I've always liked about radio is you only have a set amount of time. You've got to get your message across. You've got to know what you're saying. So actually, for me, working on things like radio advertising first, or getting that oral message across first, is so important, because actually it defines what you're about. And in a way, that should be the starting point, and then move back from there.
It's the brief. It's all about the brief.
Yeah.
What do you want people to do when they've heard the ad? Why should they? And then who are we talking to? It's as simple as that. Tell people what you want them to do and give them a really good reason to do it. Now, the branding, I think it was Martin Healy who said, branding happens. You put out a message, branding happens. You should get that right anyway. That's a matter of marketing. But the brief is, what do you want people to do? Why should they do it? And you get that right, you get effective radio ads.
And don't give them loads of messages.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
You often, I mean, if radio's done properly, the brief shouldn't go, this is a 30-second advert. It shouldn't be that. You should write the creative and then go, right, this is now a 30 or a 40 or whatever.
Well, I think,
however, you shouldn't, Simon says, give them a reason. Don't, give them something to do. Don't give them 3 or 4. If I chuck one ball at you, you might catch it. If I chuck 3 or 4 of you, you might drop them all.
You drop all of them. Yeah.
That is the nail on the head. I mean, think how poor, like, for instance, the shift campaign would have been if, we were doing all this alliteration on the buses, but for the radio ad, for some reason, we created a specific voiceover character and did a go compare. It just wouldn't work well with everything else that you're working with.
Yeah.
And whenever I'm doing marketing for a client, it all starts with that core message. Focus on one message, whether that is talk about your product or a whole emotional modifier. So, for instance, I'm working with a client at the moment called Filmworks, and it's all about their idea of creating credible. The software lets people create incredible content. So that is reiterated in every single channel that they use. And that's what I wanted to do, because if we start talking about, oh, it does this and it does that, that comes after. You've got a limited time. And again, I think radio is such a great analogy of talking about that. You've got such a limited time to say something that you want to say that one thing and you want to get it bang on so everyone remembers that. And whether that is through more so with Simon's great help, an engaging, fun, awesome story, or a great jingle or some great voiceover, it gets that message across where people can then consolidate it and then look elsewhere and also see that message extended.
Yeah,
that's brilliant.
And radio ads are more like bus sides. They go past you. You've got a limited amount of time to get that message over. It's got to be eye-catching or ear-catching, and it's got to be received correctly.
Yeah, and you might need to see it or hear it 3 times, before it actually goes in.
Hearing is believing.
Absolutely. Hearing is seeing, which is what we put on the poster. We've obviously touched people this morning. We've actually, made real connection. Drew's even going to come and see you next week.
Oh, I see, Drew. Nice to have a pint with him.
So before we end, just let people know where people can contact you, because obviously as this goes throughout the day on the different platforms, people may think, actually, I need to now consider radio, and I might need to consider talking to these guys and learning a bit more. So where can people touch base with you?
For us, Mola Mola Creative.com. Mola Mola Creative.com. Mola Mola is a kind of fish, the oceanic sunfish. There you go. Mola Mola Creative.com.
If there's any merchandising companies out there, contact Simon, because he'll blow his budget on you.
Or maybe you could just do it for free for a mention.
And Jack, you should plug your
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so I'm obviously a professional voiceover, and you can find me at jackoddie.com. Oddie is ODDIE.com. Or
award-winning.
Thank you. And if you prefer agents, I'm with Excellent Talent in London.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
Jonathan?
Yeah, and if you want to contact me, feel free to reach me out on LinkedIn or find me at granhammarketing.co.uk. give me a shout there. And if you need any marketing support, any kind of big ideas you want to talk about, love to have a chat.
Brilliant. And I think people know where I am. I live on social media, so that's where everyone will find me. Thank you all for joining me. Great conversation,
Pleasure.
great chat. If you've enjoyed this, please share it with other people so that more people can see and enjoy the conversation. This has been us talking radio this morning on social media, which is a fantastic thing to be able to do. Until next time, I'm going to be on again in not very long at 11 o'clock talking about Telaroo, managing your digital payments. Until then, bye for now.
Cheers. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.